Ladies and gentlemen, and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight, as it has been for Wednesdays throughout November, apart from one, we have with one more Nart story. I won't say the final Nart story because 2021 might bring us some more if we are very lucky, but that is that's in the ether. But for the moment, can you please put your hands together and welcome once more Dawn Ellis?
Oh, thank you so much, everybody, and how delightful to be here on this crispy evening where we are. And welcome to Nova Scotia and Romania and everybody all over the world. I'm wondering if there's anybody watching from Georgia or anywhere where these stories originally come from. If you haven't seen these stories before, this is, as John said, the last for the time being in the series of stories from the Caucasus. So that's the other side of the Black Sea. And these are stories about the brave and honorable Nart people, great horsemen who lived back in the Golden Age and roamed around that sea of grass on horses of power, doing cattle raids and having adventures. So that's the context of where we are. And this story I absolutely love, and I hope we can go through it hand in hand, because this is only the second time it's been out in public. So here we go. Long ago, back in the Golden Age, and far, far away on those rolling hills and plains of the Caucasus, there lived two powerful sorceresses. One, the Lady Saturnia, radiant, ageless, thumbs up if you can hear me. Great. This is the test that happens at the beginning of stories at the moment. So you heard about the Lady Saturnia, one of the great sorceresses, and the other one was the witch Barenbuck. Shapeshifter, the grey witch. They say she could turn herself into a pig or a weapon or even a clod of earth. And she was hard-eyed. And she watched the Lady Saturnia over the years, and she developed a grudge, like a rat gnawing away at her entrails, like a sickness. And the more radiant and beloved the Lady Saturnia was across the whole of the Caucasus, the more the witch Barenbuck waited for an opportunity to do her harm. Now, it so happened that there came a time when the Nart warriors, those 100 Nart warriors, began to cast envious glances at Lady Saturnia's youngest son. He was the great hero Sosruko, fabulous archer, superb horseman, born, they say, out of a molten rock. And not only was he a slayer of giants, but he was known to be compassionate and kind-hearted. And so the Nart warriors began to cast envious glances at their brother, their youngest brother, Sosruko. Who does he think he is? He's not even very tall, stunted, I would say. Leading us, cock of the heap. He needs taking down a peg or two. We must clip his wings. And so they whispered together. And these whispers finally reached the ears of the witch Barenbuck, she who lived out on the edge of the edge. And when she heard these whispers, the witch Barenbuck smiled to herself. And shortly after that, a hard-eyed, cloaked stranger went into the Nart marketplace and started sitting with the Nart warriors. I've heard of Sosruko, said this stranger, the great hero Sosruko. The fame of Sosruko has reached even where I come from. Well, he's not the only hero, said the Nart warriors. He's the only one I've heard of, said the stranger. The only one I've heard of. He's the only name that gets away and abroad. What a shame it is to live in the shadow of a great hero, said the stranger. It must be very hard for you to live in the shadow of one person. It must be hard to breathe. What a pity, said the stranger, that such a person can't meet with some kind of accident. And then the hard-eyed stranger vanished out of the marketplace. Meet with some kind of accident. Sosruko needs to meet with some kind of accident, said the Narts to each other. How can we do it? We must get the help of the giants. Now, what you should know is that the giants were historically implacable enemies of the Narts. So it was quite something to get the allegiance of the giants, but they managed it. I don't know what they offered them, but they made allegiances with the giants. And then one of the Narts said, but that's not enough. Sosruko has killed giants left, right, and center. We need more. What are we going to do? We need magic of some sort. Now, as soon as the word magic was mentioned, there was only one name, and that name was the witch Barenbuck. So very quickly, they drew lots as to who should go and visit the witch Barenbuck. And the Nart warrior, the brother that drew the short straw, went and said goodbye to older brother. And the older brother said, offer her anything. First of all, you must flatter her. She lives on her own. She could do with some flattery. So flatter her first and see if that works. If that doesn't work, you are authorized to offer her 3 whole years of gold, cattle, and provisions that we have won. Off you go. Godspeed. So off the brother went, all the way over to the edge, to the hut of the sorceress, the witch Barenbuck. Well, he knocked at the door and there was no response. So very cautiously, the brother opened the door and found himself in a deserted room. Deserted except for, in the center, a spinning wheel that was still spinning. So he knew she must be there somewhere, but she wasn't in human form. So the brother pulled all his courage together and he stood in the center of that hut. Great lady Barenbuck, great lady Barenbuck, I praise you. Great lady of the freezing fogs, Lady Manbinder, great Lady Manbinder, who can freeze the blood in a man's veins, who has mastery over life and death. Poor as I am, I praise you. I ask you for... There was silence. And so he resorted to his second strategy. Great lady, I'm authorized to offer you, great lady, 3 years of gold, 3 years of cattle. I'm authorized to offer you everything that we Nart warriors have won in 3 years, if you will help us. It's a small favor, he said. If you could help us control the son of the Lady Saturnia. Crack. Over in the corner, the iron stove cracked. The chimney of the iron stove shrunk and a head shot out of the top. The feet of the iron stove turned into human feet, and the iron of the stove transformed itself into a tall, grey woman with hard eyes looming over the warrior. Speak. Great lady, poor as I am, will you help us? Let's be clear. It's the Lady Saturnia's son. Yes, yes, my lady, it's the Lady Saturnia's son. And let's be crystal clear, shall we? You say you want to control him, but what you really mean is you want to kill him. All right, 6 years provision and you have a deal. And they had a deal. And so the Nart warrior went home. And the Narts proclaimed a great Caucasus-wide games to be held in a month's time. And they invited the heroes and champions from the 4 corners of the Caucasus. And as soon as Sosruko got the invitation, he went into a strict regime of training. And so by the time it came to leave for the games, Sosruko was in as fine fettle as he has ever been in his life. And as usual, Sosruko went to see his mother, the Lady Saturnia, so that she could say farewell and give her blessing, and so that she could throw the beans. She was a great diviner, the Lady Saturnia, and she would throw the beans every time he went on an expedition or to a games and tell him his good fortune. And it always was good fortune. So the Lady Saturnia opened her chest and she took out the beans and she threw them on the floor. She stiffened. "Oh, my son," she said, "no, no, no, this is not good news." She said, "Your brothers have not got your best interests at heart. I can't believe it, but they mean you harm." And she went pale. "They've got the help of the giants," she said. "You must not go. There's deep magic here, and I can't help you here." Mother, said Sosruko, "of course I'm going to the games. It's a question of honor." She said, "No, not this time. It'll be the death of you, my son. It'll be the death of you. You mustn't go." He said, "Come on, mother. I face death every time I go on an expedition." He said, "I understand that you're worried for me, but seriously, my brothers, how could they possibly have any intention other than good for me?" He said, "No, my honor is at stake here. I will go." Lady Saturnia was still pale, and she looked up at her son, and she knew there was nothing more to say. And she said, "Well, if you go," she said, "I won't be able to protect you after you leave here. This is more powerful than I am. Do you understand? But if you go, you must promise me one thing. Promise me that when you go on the road to the games, you will not pick up anything that you see by the side of the road. You will not engage with anything or anyone that you see by the side of the road. Promise me that." "Mother, I promise," said Sosruko. "Anyway," he said, "we've all got to die sometime, and I'd rather die with honor." And he gave a laugh and he kissed her on the top of her head, and off he went out, saddled up his horse, his great horse Bazau. Now, what you should know is that Bazau was a horse of power. He was so vicious that he was born at the same time and in the same moment as Sosruko. And in that time, he almost killed the stable boy who was looking after him. And Sosruko was the only person who could tame him. And this horse of power, he could outrun the wind, and he could understand human speech, and he could even speak himself when the opportunity arose. What you should also know about Sosruko is that for all his reputation for being invincible, he actually wasn't completely invincible. At the time when he was born out of the molten rock, the blacksmith took him, and the blacksmith tempered him in ice and fire. But the blacksmith held him in his tongs by the knees. And so Sosruko's knees were never tempered. And that was his one vulnerability. But nobody knew that. Not many people knew that. Let's face it, some people knew it, right? Sosruko knew it. The Lady Saturnia knew it. The blacksmith knew it. And his horse knew it. So that's the situation as Sosruko gallops off in good spirits down the road towards the games. So they hadn't gone far, Bazao and Sosruko, when in front of them they saw an extraordinary sight. There was a pear tree just by the side of the road where a tree had not been before. And as Sosruko and Bazao got close, they saw that at the base of the tree there were two pairs of boots. One of them was an old pair of hobnail boots. The other, a pair of calfskin riding boots, silky. And as Sosruko looked at them, he looked back down at his own dusty riding boots and he wanted those boots. But as he got close to the tree, the boots started jiggling up and down. They jiggled up and down and then they scampered up the trunk of the pear tree. And when they got into the branches, the pear tree burst into white blossom. Sosruko stood with his mouth open. But no sooner were those beautiful riding boots at the top of the tree than the hobnail boots, they started jiggling up and down and they started plodding up the other side of the pear tree. And when they got to the branches, the pear tree withered and drooped. And Sosruko said, "It's a miracle. My mother would love that." And he stretched out his hand. But then he remembered his mother and he came to himself and he stared resolutely ahead down that road and he jingled the bridle and off he went with his horse further down the road. They hadn't gone much further than they heard the sound of little voices arguing. And when he rounded the corner, he saw two little figures jumping up and down in the middle of the road, shouting at each other. "Give me some! No, you can't have any!" And as he got closer, he saw that they were two drinking horns shouting at each other. And one of them was full of beer and the other one was empty. Well, the one that was full of beer was stopping the other one from having any, and the other one was all up for a fight. And when Sosruko saw this, Sosruko thought, I could have such fun tricking my brothers at a feast with these. And no sooner had he thought that than his horse shook his head and jingled his harness, and Sosruko came to himself and he set off down the road without looking back. If he had looked back, he would have seen the two drinking vessels turn into two legs and out of them grow a tall grey figure with hard eyes who looked at him, clenching her fist as she watched him go down the road. Well, the morning turned into afternoon, and it wasn't long before, as they went down the dusty road, Sosruko saw something glinting in the road ahead of him. It looked, he saw it was a snake. It was a golden snake stretched across the road. But as he came closer, he saw that snake writhing and knotting itself. It wasn't a snake. It was a beautiful whip, and it was curling itself up, reeling itself up, and then stretching itself out again. And Sosruko, he said, "I will go to the games with this magical whip, and I will win everything, and I will be the talk with this whip." And he stretched down his hand to pick up the whip, but as he did so, his horse stamped and he snorted, and the horse said, "No, master. Remember your promise." And Sosruko remembered his promise, and he came to himself, and he shook the bridle, and he looked resolutely straight ahead, and then went further down that road without looking back. If Sosruko had looked back, he would have seen a tall woman with hard eyes looking at him with a clenched fist as he went down the road. Well, Finally, as it was getting towards the golden time of the afternoon, Sosruko turned a corner and he saw in front of him a pile of gold glistening in the sunshine, and he cantered Bazao, his horse, up to that glittering pile of gold, and as he got close, he saw that it was a golden hat, a golden conical hat like a helmet. If he put that hat on his head, he would be the king. No king could have a finer hat than that. He was putting down his hand to pick it up when his horse said, "No, master, no, remember your promise." But it was too late, and Sosruko had reached out and he put that hat on his head. And the moment he had it on his head, he felt taller and wider and stronger and more handsome than he had ever felt in his life before, and he could hear in his ears the chanting of his name as he and his horse pranced into the games. He could hear the roar of the crowd. He could see himself winning everything and everybody bowing down before him. His horse was speaking and broke his reverie. "Master," he said, "what have you done? You have put us in danger, master." "Danger," said Sosruko. "Don't be ridiculous. Nag, nag, nag. That's all I ever hear from you. You're like an old mare, not like a war horse. Shut up and let me get on." "Master," he said, "you've put us in danger. I tell you, you've..." And Sosruko said, "There is no danger," he said. "Nobody can touch us," he said. "We are invincible." "Nobody knows our secret," says Sosruko. "Nobody knows about my knees. Nobody knows about the curse that's on your legs. And who would fight us on the beach anyway? And where is there a beach? I don't even know where there is one." "Stop, master," said his horse. "You have broken your word. You have dishonored yourself." At that, rage boiled over in the head of Sosruko, and he began to beat his horse about the neck. He beat him across the withers, and he beat him until bloody wheels of foam and sweat came up on the horse. And then Sosruko jumped off his horse so that he could get a good grip on the whip and beat the sides of his horse as well. And as he jumped off, the hat fell off him. The moment the hat was off Sosruko, he came to himself and he looked at what he'd done. "Oh, my friend," said Sosruko, "what have I done to you? I must be mad. I'm so sorry," said Sosruko. And he went round to the front of his friend and he took the horse's head in his hand and he said, "I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me?" And his horse blew softly through his nostrils and whickered and whinnied to him. And Sosruko said, "We need to get you cleaned up. We need to get you washed." And very tenderly, he took the reins of his horse and he began to walk down the road without looking back. But if he had looked back, I think you know what he would have seen behind him. Further down the road, there was a house just by the side of the road with a garden, and standing outside the house, a young woman carrying a water pitcher and looking down the road towards Sosruko almost as if she was expecting him. And Sosruko, being careful now, took his reins of his horse and he walked straight past her, trying not to look. But he managed to see that the curve of her figure was very much the same as of the curve of the water pitcher, and that she had a little blush in her face. And he couldn't help noticing as he passed, although he wasn't really looking, that she was very beautiful, and he felt his heart beat a little faster, but he kept on walking and looking straight ahead. And they went round the corner And then his horse dug his hooves in that dusty road. "Master, I am not going any further," he said. "Go back and get the water." Sosruko said, "No, we were told, you said we mustn't touch anything." He said, "It's too late for that now. Go back." "You're right," said Sosruko. "We'll go back." And so he led his horse back to that garden, back to the house. And the young woman wasn't in the garden anymore. So Sosruko, he went up the path and he went towards the door, and the door was open. But in front of the door, on the threshold, there was a dog. And Sosruko lifted up his foot to go over the dog. And as soon as he did that, there was a sound of tiny little yipping and yapping noises. And when Sosruko looked down, there, underneath the skin of the dog, were little tiny points coming up like little muzzles. They looked like the muzzles of the unborn puppies. Sosruko immediately stepped back. The yapping stopped. He picked up his foot again to go over. It started again. But he kept going and he stepped over that dog. And with all his senses now alert, Sosruko went into the house. Inside was a plain little cottage with a crackling fire in the hearth. And on either side of the hearth, an old woman and an old man. And Sosruko greeted them in the formal way. "Greetings, grandfather. Greetings, grandmother," he said. "God be with you. Good food always, good water always. I am looking for the young mistress of the house." And he said to grandfather, "Can you help me?" Grandfather opened his mouth, and instead of a tongue, out came a long black snake that curled and vanished into the corner of the room. Sosruko instinctively put his hand on his dagger, and he looked towards grandmother and he said, "Grandmother, can you tell me where the young mistress of the house is?" Grandmother, she opened her mouth to speak, and instead of words, out of her mouth came flames. Sparks came from out between her teeth. But she pointed silently towards another room. Sosruko thanked them and he went, and there was the kitchen. And inside the kitchen was the young woman he'd seen in the garden, and she was kneading dough to make some bread. "Greetings, mistress," said Sosruko. "Ah," she said, "you've come, Sosruko. Welcome. I've been waiting for you," she said. She said, "I want to hear your story, but first we need to see to your horse." And so together, Sosruko and the young woman went outside to the well, and together they washed the great horse with water from the well. And as they washed the blood and the foam and the sweat away, it seemed as if the cuts in the flanks healed. And as they washed him, occasionally they caught each other's eye, and sometimes their fingers touched over the back of the great horse. And when they'd finished, she led him inside and she gave him dinner. And when they'd finished, she said, "Sosruko," she said, "you must have seen some marvelous things on your journey." And he said, "Yes, I did. I saw some extraordinary things." And she said, "But you didn't touch any of them, did you?" And he said, "I did. I did touch the hat. In fact, it was the hat that led to the whole trouble with my horse." And she said, yes, I see that. But you didn't, tell me you didn't say anything. You didn't give away any secrets, did you, when you had the hat on?" Sosruko nodded. She said, "Oh, you have now told your secrets to the witch Barenbuck. She is even now with your enemies, telling them how they can kill you." She said, "You must not go to the games. Stay here. I urge you, don't go. Sosruko said, what is it with, I am going, he said, it's my honor. My honor is at stake here. You don't understand. I'm a Nart. I've been bred as a Nart. I must go to the games. She said, honor? Honor, she said. Things change. Look at grandmother and grandfather. It was honor that got them into that state. Neither of them would back down because of their honor. And now look, he can only speak snakes. She can only speak flames. That's what happens if you stick rigidly to your honor. And he said, I get it, but seriously, I cannot go against my honor. And she said, well, so be it. But she said, that dog that you stepped over, that pregnant bitch that you stepped over with all the unborn puppies, she said, those puppies were all your futures. They're your unborn futures. We all have futures. You can make a choice, Sosruko. She said, one of those futures could be with me. And the young woman took Sosruko's face and very tenderly she kissed him. And they looked into each other's eyes, and that young woman kissed away all thoughts of honor from Sosruko's mind. And he stayed with her that night. And in the morning, while she was still asleep, he touched her face softly, and he put on his boots, and he went outside and he saddled up his great horse and rode onwards towards the games. The Narts, the Nart warriors really knew how to organize a games. They had taken over 2 hillsides for the games. On the one hillside were the giants, wrestling, boxing each other. On the other side, there was horse racing and a kind of rudimentary form of polo that you did with a dead sheep. There were all sorts of other games going on in between, and in the very center was the feasting hall. And once Sosruko and Bazao rode into the games, a great cheer went up. Sosruko, you're here! And everybody cheered, and everybody was pleased to see his shining face. And Sosruko and Bazao did all the games. And Bazao the horse, he ran all the horse races and he won everything. And Sosruko, as always, he did all the archery, even the archery when you had to hit an egg that was hanging really 100 yards away, and everybody saw him winning, as always. Sosruko won. And when it came to the end, it was entertainment. Now, they did dancing for entertainment, but they did something else when Sosruko was around, because he had a sort of a party trick. Do you remember I said that Sosruko was tempered 7 times in ice and fire when he was a baby, when he was first born? Well, what happened was he became a man of iron, and he was invulnerable. There was no weapon that could hurt Sosruko. Obviously, nobody knew about the knees. And so Sosruko's party trick was with a discus. And what would happen was people would take it in turns to throw the discus at Sosruko, and he would bat it back with different parts of his body. So this is what they set out to do as a surprise and an entertainment. Everybody gathered to see it. And Sosruko and his brothers set themselves up, and the elder brother had the discus. And Sosruko went a little far away, and the elder brother said, "Are you ready, Sosruko?" And Sosruko said, "I'm ready." And elder brother said, "Where shall I throw to?" And Sosruko said, "You choose." And elder brother said, "I choose the forehead." And he threw the discus, and it flew through the air, and it hit Sosruko on the forehead, and it bounced off, and it flipped back. And Sosruko said, "Look, no mark, no mark." And everybody cheered, "Yes!" Again, said Sosruko. And the elder brother said, "Where now? You choose," said Sosruko. "I choose the elbow," said elder brother. And he threw the discus, and the discus flew through the air, and Sosruko flipped it back with his elbow. "Look," he said, "no mark." "Yes," said the crowd, and cheered his name. "Again," said Sosruko. And elder brother, he said, "Wait," he said, "we have a special discus for you. We got it specially made." And he reached into a bag by his feet and he pulled out a glimmering golden discus with a razor-sharp edge. "It's beautiful," said Sosruko. "I know," said elder brother, "it's for you. Where shall I throw to?" And Sosruko said, "You choose." And elder brother said, "I choose the knees." And at that moment, Sosruko suddenly understood everything. He saw his mother's worried frown as she looked at the beans. He saw the golden hat. He remembered the bloody wheels on his great horse's flanks. He saw in his mind's eye the tear-stained cheeks of the young woman. Was that only yesterday? He understood, and he looked at his older brother, and something passed between them. And Sosruko said, "Is it now?" "Yes, yes," said elder brother. "Will you play?" "I will," said Sosruko, and he stood without flinching, and older brother took that golden discus and he threw it towards Sosruko's knees, and it hummed through the air, and it hit Sosruko's right knee, and it sliced through and hit Sosruko's left knee, and it sliced through, and Sosruko fell. There was a silence over the whole crowd. And in that silence, nobody noticed the discus disappear and a grey figure disappearing into the crowd. And the silence was broken by the thundering of hooves, and Bazao came up, and Bazao came down to his master, and he said, "Master, get up if you can. We need to fly from here now. There's still a chance. Get up, master." And Sosruko, biting his lips with the pain, held onto the mane of his great horse, and he managed to get up onto the horse, and Bazao the horse flew out of that place, away from the sea of grass, over to the mountains. And the Nart warriors and the giants started massing their armies and getting their weapons in the agreed plan, and they gave chase. And Bazao went like the wind, but the armies came after, and they went into the pincer movement they had agreed, and Sosruko never knew where he was being driven until he felt the salt spray on his face. And at that moment, Bazao's hooves struck the shingle of the seashore, and the hooves splintered and the great legs splintered, and the horse was down. "Master," said Bazao, "I'm finished. Kill me. You must kill me. It will buy you time." And Sosruko said, "No, no, 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 no. I will never do that. I will never do that. You must do it. I will take my death from you," said Bazao, the great horse. He said, "Take this last service I can offer you. Do it now." And Sosruko, looking into his friend's eyes, he took the sword and he pressed it against the chest of his horse. And he hesitated, still he hesitated, and the horse pressed in, and the sword went into the heart of the great horse, and the horse fell. And with scalding tears running down his face, Sosruko took the skin from the horse, and he put the horse skin over him. And the moment he did that, he felt power coming back to him. He felt all the power of his horse coming back to him. And at that moment, the armies struck. Sosruko, they say, held those armies off for 3 days and 3 nights underneath that horse's skin. They attacked him with arrows. They attacked him with swords. Nothing hurt him. It all glanced off him in exactly the same way as it always had. And in the end, the Nart warriors called the wild beasts. And they said, come, come wolves, come eagles, come you wild beasts. There's a feast for you here down on the seashore. Sosruko is helpless. Come and take your revenge from this hunter. And the animals came. All the animals came and they made a circle around Sosruko underneath that horse's skin. They made a circle facing outwards. And they all said in unison, we will not devour Sosruko. Sosruko was a great hunter and he hunted us, but he was always honorable and he went through the correct rituals. We refuse to devour this hunter. And when Sosruko heard that, he called the animals in one by one underneath the horse's skin. And he called the wolf in first. And he said, wolf, my brother, he said, I don't need my power anymore. He said, I'm going to give you some of my power. I give you my strength. Take this, my strength, and have it for all your descendants. And the wolf left. He called in the eagle. And he said, eagle, my dear friend, he said, take my far-sightedness. I don't need it anymore. Take it for your descendants. And the eagle left with his far-sightedness. He called the buck in. Buck, he said, you and I have had relationship. I've killed you many a time. He said, take my sure-footedness and my speed. Take it now and take it down for your descendants. He called the hare in. He said to the hare, brother hare, he said, take my intuition. You will always have that and take it for your descendants. And he said to the fox, he said, come in, my friend. He said, you are my special friend. He said, you and I know some things. He said, you take my cunning. Take it all the way down through the world for your descendants. And then a little voice spoke up, and it was the quail. And the quail said, have you got anything for me, Sosruko? Oh, said Sosruko, of course, little sister. He said, I give you the sound of a whiplash. He said, whenever you flap your wings, it will sound like a whiplash, and that will give you time to escape your enemies. And she flew off with the sound of a whiplash. And then Sosruko called to his brothers, the warriors, and he said, my brothers, he said, I'm helpless here. Do what you like to me. I've lost my power. Do whatever you can. But what could they do? They did the one thing they could do. The Nart warriors and the giants began to pile heavy stones and boulders on top of the horse's skin until they created a cairn, and then more than a cairn. They created a mound so tall and wide that it could be seen for miles around. And then they dispersed. And they say that Sosruko lies there, asleep, still, waiting to be called, waiting for his time to come again. Do unmute yourselves.
Fantastic, Dawn. That was a wonderful story to finish this series on. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
I don't know what one's my favourite. They're all just amazing, but I absolutely love that. Oh my God. It was like, I feel like I've been on the whole journey itself. There's so much going on there. Oh.
Ali, if you can stop Facebook streaming now while we have a conversation, and that'd be great. And
so I'd love to hear what anybody thought. And thank you, Gemma. And it's quite a, it's quite a hard story to hear, I think, in some ways, because it is the death of a hero. And we don't want it to happen. But I personally think it's redemptive. But I'd love to hear, what you have to say about it.
well, I like it because I like the idea of it's common, but the flawed hero, and in the end, it's that flaw that that is his demise, because otherwise there'd just be too many heroes in the world.
Well, we couldn't stand that.
He's very stubborn, isn't he? He just he makes up his mind to something and then he just does it. And he's also got, he's very rageful. He has a lot of fury in him. Was that the flaw you were thinking of, John? Were you thinking of another one?
Well, I was thinking both those that and the fact that he went and picked. I mean, he did pick up the hat. I mean, that was kind of like he just couldn't hold on that to get to the games. It was just done job then, really. And there's a determinist quality. Once he's picked up the hat, there's a determinist quality to the whole thing. But he's going to do something.
Yeah, you do. It's like, oh my God, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
I'd be very curious to know what people thought about that whole episode in the house with the snakes and the puppies, and very weird, I think.
Oh, very, very weird. We'll be thinking about that for a long time. Wow.
Well, a lot of stories about deaths of heroes, though. It's a popular topic,
This is a really big story. I haven't seen the other episodes yet. I've read the book a long time ago, but now I'm just dying to go back and get back into it.
Oh, they're all in the archive, so you can hear.
I know.
You can get the other episodes.
Yes, I saw that. And
the house fascinated me with the thing, but it's also that persistence, like just and it's kind of interesting within the Nart story because it questions that whole concept of honor, which is so central to the whole Nart story. So in that moment, the whole concept is questioned.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? It's that whole honor is all very well, but if it's honor to the exclusion of horse sense, then it is going to be your downfall, as we know in the world, don't we? Like if you stick to your position, it is going to be.
In my mind, as a what out the net, it is so amazing.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Oh.
Anybody else? A couple more minutes.
The Nart stories are new to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with them. And I did not know why was the woman spitting flames.
Quite.
And I need to know. It has to be another story, and I need to know what the story is. And why does her husband spit snakes? I need to know. It invokes in me the need to find out more. That's all. It's just amazing.
The imagery is extraordinary in this. I mean, one of the reasons, I've got 5 hours of Nart stories now, and I'm continuing to the new year. I've got something I'm going to be doing next year with them all, hopefully. So it's my mission to bring them all to life, or a lot of them. But the imagery in them is extraordinary. It's not like imagery I've heard in any other sort of epics or traditions. It's very strange indeed.
Yes.
I love the description in that.
That was so wow. But in my mind, but what happened next was amazing.
It does, doesn't it? It does that thing where you know whatever's going to happen next. You know, you're kind of on the edge of your chair on it. But it reminds me in some ways of the of that sort of the twists and turns of the Calavella, because you know the hero in the Calavella is another flawed character. You know it's just gonna, you know, his time's gonna come. It's gonna take a while, and but he screws up all the time. He does. And there's these amazing sort of powerful women characters that keep coming in the and they're not the nearest I can think of the Nart stories as a sort of parallel is the stories in the Calavella, which were of course, you know, separate stories that were woven together.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know, I've done quite a lot of research on these, and there's it's weird that they're so little known, because there's a school of, you know, academically there's a school of thought that says if you're going to look at the history of mythology, and these are myths really, to ignore these stories, which are the bridge between East and West, is a mistake. So I'm just so grateful to have found them, and to have, thank you to you, John, to have the opportunity to be able to bring them to life and bring them to the public. I'm so grateful to you for allowing me to play with them in this way and bring them out.
Well, we must, you know, but it's going to be like you know, you can all wait with bated breath for the next series.
Well, there are other heroes. I particularly like Sosruko because he's a hothead, and he's a flawed hero, and he's a bit of trickster as well as a bit of hero in some of his stories. But there are many other heroes, so you know, it's endless almost.
Well, you know, I'll give you another months of Wednesdays at some point if you want.
Yes.
You can have that. Just because I want to hear them, you know, I don't care about anyone else. I need to hear them. So you can have another month of Wednesdays, probably February or something, if you're ready. Then
that would be great. Give me a little time off to look at some other types.
Well, I've got got another serialized series for February. For January's Wednesdays.
Oh, great!
Which is Paro Anand, who's a brilliant Indian author, and she's interested in, partly because she came, I think, in Nepal across the displaced people, and she's invented her own people of displaced, which is a sort of amalgam of, and they've got their own language and everything, and she deals a lot with taboo subjects anyway in her books, and she's written this novel called Nomad's Land, and she talked about it the other day on the thing. So on one Saturday, I think, because 2:00 and so people could listen to it in India. But I wanted to, you know, I just listened to that. I thought, well, you know, most of it is just told, but this is, you know, a serialized book. Well, it'll be serialized extracts, obviously, but so all Wednesdays, I think, through January are going to be a serialized version of Nomad's Land.
Brilliant.
So you've definitely got January off.
I want all her other stories as well, because she's got so many other stories too, not just Narts, all of them.
Yeah. Thank you, Gemma.
And I loved, you know what I loved? When you did, there were so many moments, but I love you always have these special moments for me when you have, like, you know, you could have so easily said, yes, no, you know, there was only 1 or 2 people knew about the knees, but then the way you did it, it was like leading and like no one knew, and then it was like, well, actually, it brings so much humor. I loved that. And that serpent and fire bit, you know, that's quite interesting, because you've got elements of magic within that, and that's probably found within that sort of folklore of like the active and the passive, and annihilation of duality within it, which occurs with those symbols. There's so many layers in these stories.
And you never know, because it's from an oral tradition, whether they're sitting somewhere was the story of that generation.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels very old to me. That the sparks and the snake, that feels very shamanistic to me.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
So and they're taking from say an earlier tradition, and by making it the grandparents in the house, it's like this happened, back in the mist. So
Yeah.
Well,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you
so
very
much for
much.
being there and being live on Zoom. It makes such a huge difference to have you there as an audience. And thank you, John, once again.
And thank you for visiting us. And come visit us again. Don't wait to February for Dawn to come back. I know, Janet, you come in occasionally. But we love live audiences.
And it's
and David, you're regular.
the time zone works for us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
See you there in the middle of the night in Montreal.
Oh yeah, I do. I did pop in the other day. When I was being a night owl. Okay, and thank you, Ali, for driving the bus again.
Welcome, John.
Yes, what we would do without Morocco and Romania, Ali and Morocco and Julio in Romania, there'd be me pressing buttons and failing miserably to press the right ones.
Muting me.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I'm really at the bottom now. Come do that do well. What the unknown. But it
Next story rounds on 13th.
I let everybody know. Go.
Oh yeah. Well, Sunday we have story round every other Sunday, and so we put on the Sundays in between. We put on two tellers. So I've got Zara and Sarah. This we've got an Iranian teller and an English teller this Sunday, both doing a great set, and then the following Sunday is open, so anyone can come to a story round, and at a time that is quite sociable for Nova Scotia. So probably having your Sunday dinner or something at that point. But well, lovely. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for reminding me to plug that, David. So, very well.
Bye.
Wherever you are in this world, and
Goodbye.
whatever time it is. And if we don't see you again, have a wonderful month. And may January be better.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Oh.
Goodbye, David.